Welcome to the Sagan National Colloquium. I'm Matt Volrath, a professor in the Business Administration program here at Ohio Wesleyan University, and it's my pleasure to introduce and welcome tonight Josh Moulton. Josh Moulton is a professional painter, owner of the Josh Moulton Fine Art Gallery in Lincoln Park, Chicago, and the son of celebrated illustrator Conrad Moulton. His work is collected internationally, and his paintings adorn many corporate office spaces around the country. Josh has been painting full-time as his career in Chicago for 17 years. His work was represented by galleries in Santa Fe, New Mexico, Chicago, and Winnetka before he decided to open his own gallery in 2011. The Josh Moulton Fine Art Gallery in Lincoln Park serves as his space for creating new paintings and a gallery to display and sell his work. Josh draws on life experiences and his travel when he chooses what to paint. His work is very realistic while at the same time showcasing his brushwork and hand upon closer inspection. The gallery at all times has around 40 original paintings for sale, many framed prints of the paintings, and 5 to 6 original paintings in the works. In addition, Josh is always available for commissioned work. Josh has graciously agreed to share with us tonight about his journey into entrepreneurship and what creatives of all kinds might be able to learn from it. Josh, thank you very much for making time to speak with us.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me. Thank you to Ohio Wesleyan for having me, and my college buddy Goran, who invited me as well here. Can't believe it's been 21 years since we graduated from Lake Forest College. So welcome to my gallery. I'm sitting here in the Art Gallery in Chicago in Lincoln Park on Clark Street, just north of the city. And this is where I have all my work, and this is where I produce everything. I figured I'd start off by giving you a rundown of how I got started and my story, and how I got to where I am now. And then I have some topics. I have 4 topics I wanted to discuss with you as well. So I'll start off. I'm the son of an artist, so that's really how I got started. It's in my blood, and I was kind of born into it. My father was an illustrator in New York City during the 40s, 50s, and 60s for all the ad agencies during that Mad Men era of illustration. But by the time I was born, he was doing portraits and landscapes and abstracts at our home in Detroit. He had his studio in the house, and next to his drawing board, he had a little easel for me to do work. So I've been painting since 3 years old, and he taught me pretty much everything I needed to know from a very young age. So I was always that kid growing up that could be the one that students would turn to do the artwork. And I went to a small private school from K through 12. And I was always the artist kid, and I knew I was going to pursue it. I just needed to figure out how I was going to do it. I got a 4-year art scholarship to Lake Forest College, so I attended that school just north of Chicago. It's very much like Ohio Wesleyan, about 1,200 students. And I was an art major there. Took a lot of I was a history minor, and took a lot of other classes in order to have a well-rounded education, so that when I graduated, I could pursue my artwork as a business. And then after I graduated, I had a strong body of work, but it's very difficult to do this full time at all, but let alone right out of college. So I had to get a job with benefits, health insurance, and I got a paycheck every 2 weeks while I still pursued my artwork on the side. So I worked at a mutual fund company called Scudder Investments because a college friend of mine worked there and told me it wasn't that difficult and I'd be fine at it. So I did that for a couple of years. But every night when I would get home from working at that job, I painted. And I worked on commission work for customers, and I explored having gallery shows in Chicago because I knew that's still what I wanted to do. It wasn't finance. So I did that for about 2.5 years. And then I started painting full time as my career. And I would always approach certain galleries that I thought represented work that was like mine. And it's a very difficult path to do it. It's difficult to get into some of these top-notch galleries. And finally, I did in 2005. I got into the Peter Bartlow Gallery in Chicago in River North, in the heart of the gallery district. And he's been an art dealer for 40 years or so. So that was a real feather in my cap. And once that happened, I felt like I could really do this as a career. So then I got picked up by a few other galleries, and I enjoyed that. But still, you're at the mercy of the gallery dealer and the gallery owner. You're not your own boss. And they take 50% commission on the sales, and you never really know how much of your work they have up on the walls or how hard they're really trying to sell your work. And I kind of wanted to do it on my own, and I was building those relationships anyway, so I felt like I could do it. And so in 2011, I decided to take the leap and the jump and take on the responsibility of the rent on a gallery space in Chicago. And I started my gallery, and it's going to be 10 years in June. And things are going great. I mean, there's ups and downs, and there's times when you never know when the next sale is going to happen. And there's times where you're overwhelmed with work and you can't get it all done in time for the customers. And but at least you get to do what you love, and so that's where I am right now. But there are 4 things I wanted to mention that I think transcend whatever kind of career you want to go into. So as an artist and as a business owner, these things translate to what I think students at the college should try and do. And the first, and I think the most important thing, is relationship building. And that starts at a very young age. It starts when you're in middle school. You never know what your friends or the teachers or people you meet, the friends' parents, how somewhere down the line, those people can help you get to what you need to do for your career. They could get you an interview. So it's very important to keep those relationships going. And I actually enjoy doing those things. I know a lot of people don't, especially a lot of artists are very introverted and they don't think that way. They only think about, producing artwork. But it's super important to build those relationships so that you can network. And eventually those things will help you out. The other thing that part of the networking situation is the birth of social media. And I know a lot of people are not thrilled with social media over the past 10 to 15 years, but I really am. Social media has been huge for me because I use it in a way that's constructive. I use it in a way that I'm not badgering people. I'm not soliciting people to buy my work. I'm just putting it out there into the world. And then if someone likes it, they'll contact me. I don't put prices with it. I just put the artwork out there. I put images that I think people would be interested in, and then eventually that leads to commission paintings. And it's just been great for me. And it's a free platform, and I'd say probably 60 to 70% of my business comes from my work that I put in to constantly be in front of people on social media. And I really try not to be obnoxious about it, but it's very important. Also, talking about relationships, I think it's important to make sure throughout your career, and especially when you're young and getting started, is not to burn any bridges and make enemies. It's very easy, especially as an artist, to get frustrated with maybe customers or superiors or things like that. But it's important to try to be the nice guy and go above and beyond with the customers, because there's that saying, the customer is always right. And a lot of times that's true if you want to keep a great reputation and not have people think poorly about you. So it's important not to burn bridges if you want to build relationships. But it's also important to stand up for yourself too. If you ever feel like you're getting walked on or trampled on, especially as an artist, a lot of times people look down upon you as your career is not really as important or significant as another career. So it's important to stand up for yourself if you feel like you need to. And those are the things I wanted to talk about with relationship building. The second thing, a lot of times people say, well, you're very, very lucky to be an artist and do it for a living. And I do feel lucky, but it's also from a lot of hard work. It's from commitment and sacrifice. I paint every day, all day for the past 20 years. And I'm never tired of it. I love it because it's what I want to do. And I feel fortunate, not lucky. I feel fortunate that I get to do it for a living. So I work so hard, and then success comes from that hard work. And that's with whatever you do. The third thing I want to talk about is taking risks and chances. So obviously being an artist full time is a risk. There's that old saying, there's a starving artist. And I hate that saying. It's terrible because you would never say that about another profession, but people feel freely about saying that as an artist. And I think they don't really think about it, but it's not the greatest thing to say. But but they say that for a reason, because not many people know artists that do this for a living, painters that have their own gallery and they work, and that's all the income they get. They don't have a paycheck every 2 weeks. But if you really feel passionate about it and you think you have the ability and you know there's a demand out there for the quality of the work you're producing, that's a risk you might want to take. And if it works out, it might take a few years or 5 to 10 years to really figure out if that's going to work out. You have to take financial risks, and you have to take the chances of putting in the time. While others might get ahead with the careers they're in, you're still working on yours. And then the fourth thing I'll talk about is just not being shy. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier about artists being kind of introverted and maybe not business savvy. But it's really important not to be shy in no matter what you do. You need to be your biggest cheerleader without being obnoxious, but in a humble way. You have to not be afraid to put your stuff out there, and you can't wait for others to discover you. If you want to be successful and you want people to know about what you're up to and what you're doing, you got to get out there and get in front of people. And that's the only way you're really going to find out if it works or not. And if it doesn't work, then you've got to find something else to do. But you can't be shy about it. You can't wait for people to come find you. And those are the 4 topics I wanted to discuss, and I'm open to questions if anyone has any questions.
Josh, thanks so much. Like Mr. Moulton just said, if anybody has questions or comments, please feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll take a lot of those. We've got plenty of time for questions. I've got a couple just to kick things off. You mentioned that you always knew that you wanted to be a professional artist. Coming out of college and you're spending time working in finance, what were the obstacles during those few years coming out of college that were at the front of your mind when you were thinking about whether you could do something like open a gallery or be an artist full time? What was preventing you from doing that right away?
Well, as someone right out of college, there's a lot of pressure to cover your expenses, and so being an artist for anybody in this country is very, very difficult. And a lot of times artists will have to supplement their artwork by being a teacher or a professor and then do their art on the side, which is totally fine and it is not as risky. But coming out of college, I needed to make sure that I was making a certain amount of money per month on sales of my work. And if I could cover those expenses, I could keep going at it. And then eventually, year after year, I started making more and more, getting more and more commissions, getting more recognized, just having an expanded client base. And that takes time to build up. That doesn't happen overnight. And I tried not to spend too much money on advertising and marketing and hiring a PR person, or because those things are very, very expensive, and you never know if it's really going to work. I've done a few advertising things, but they don't really turn out. So just getting the word out there is so important. And then the people come to you and it's word of mouth, and then they see your work in a hospital or in an office, and it just kind of snowballs and builds. So that's kind of how I got here. Now I kind of, it's nice. I don't mean to sound boastful, but I don't need to go looking for it that much anymore. It kind of consistently comes to me. But that's 21 years worth of hard work and building a brand and building a resume of corporate collections. And, the storefront gallery really helps too to build your brand. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
We've got several questions coming in now. First one from Ellen. She asks, do you do juried art shows?
I used to. So getting into a big gallery in Chicago is pretty much juried, because they don't select too many artists. But so once I got picked up by that gallery, he told me, if I'm going to represent you, you're not going to do any art fairs or art shows, because there's kind of these different tiers in the art world. Where if you're represented by a gallery, they don't want your stuff on the street in a tent unless they're doing it at Art Basel in Miami or something like that. So I couldn't go on the side, do an art show like the Ann Arbor Art Fair or something like that, where if I had a gallery that didn't want me to do that. But yeah, when I was younger, right out of college, I was in several different art shows. Yeah. Not anymore. No.
Thanks. Another question from Ava. Ava asks, when you're putting your art out on social media, how are you promoting it and getting it out there? And what is your strategy for posting content?
Good question. So, like I said, I really don't want to solicit people because I think that's a big turnoff. You know, if you put your painting out there on social media and you say, okay, it's $4,000, and you're going to, one, maybe turn off a lot of people that think that's a lot of money, or two, you know, there's people that think that might not be enough for what they want to collect. And then people don't want to feel pressured to buy something. So I don't put it out there to say, here it is, buy it. I put it out there to say, here's a new piece. If they like it, they'll contact me, or they'll share it with someone else, or they'll reach out to me privately in the messenger thing. So I use Facebook, Instagram. I'm not that active on Twitter, LinkedIn, but I do everything in a very kind of professional way, and I'm not trying to annoy people with what I'm putting out there. The other thing is, which is very interesting about social media, and this goes for any small business owner, you have to be careful what you also say on social media covering other subjects too, because you don't want to upset a certain, half of the country that might think a certain way. So you have to be careful about what you're covering with your social media posts if you want to stay consistent with your business practices too.
Okay, we have a question from Lauren. Lauren says, how do you put yourself out there in a big city like Chicago? I'm a Chicago native and curious how you make yourself known in such a modern and well-known area like Lincoln Park. What were your strategies before social media in earlier days when it wasn't as prevalent?
Yeah, I pounded the pavement. I got out there and I kept producing, and I chose subjects that I thought were really not touristy, but subjects I thought were profound and interesting and kind of had my own style, and people knew it was my work. And I emailed a lot of people, interior designers, corporate art consultants. And if you don't get a response, well, at least you tried. You're not going to get a lot of responses sometimes, but at least you tried. I did a lot of research. I went through all these websites to figure out who's in charge of buying the artwork for this office building, and who could I talk to about this project, and what new buildings were going up in Chicago. And I also joined groups like small business breakfast groups where I was the one that represented the arts. And there was a guy who's an insurance guy, and there's a guy who's a mortgage broker, and that kind of networking really helps, because they'll think of you the next time someone needs artwork for someplace, and then you can help them with their business too. And there's a lot of groups like that in Chicago. I don't really do those much anymore, but they're great when you're young and you're starting out, and you just need to kind of hand out business cards and make sure people know that you're there.
Great tips. Alexis asks, I'm a Chicago native and also interested in making art and curation. What made you interested in owning a gallery? Do you have background in curation? And what advice can you give a student who is interested in working in a gallery or art museum?
So in college at Lake Forest College, we had our own gallery also, like Ohio Wesleyan has. And that was one of my student jobs, was kind of manning the front desk at the gallery. But no, I didn't really have any experience in owning a brick and mortar storefront. So I had a lot of lessons I had to learn on the fly, some mistakes, and some things turned out well. And you just kind of learn through experiences. But I wanted to have my own space because I felt like I deserved it. And I wanted to have it. And I wanted to stop paying 50% commission to the art galleries, because what a lot of people don't know, well, maybe they know this, but art galleries are usually owned by people who are not artists. They're art dealers. So they have a lot of background in art, don't get me wrong, but they don't produce work. They represent work that they think they can sell. So I wanted to own my own space. So, yeah.
Mary Nell asks, how did your undergrad college art department approach the business aspect of being an artist?
How did my undergrad and college art? It didn't really talk about business much at all in my the studio art major, and we didn't really cover a lot of business aspects of being an artist. We just more covered just the discipline of creating the artwork. There were a few field trips to galleries down in the city where we would meet with gallery owners and listen to them about what they look for in artists. And those types of things, how to approach a gallery. But as far as, the economics of being an artist once you graduate from college, that wasn't really discussed very much. But that's what's so great about going to a liberal arts school, where you can take economics classes and business math classes and politics classes and learn up to be more well-rounded.
So Ethan is requesting your Instagram. Is that something that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's at Josh Moulton Fine Art, I think. At Moulton and then Fine Art.
Great. Okay, we've got a question from Christina. She says, which social media platforms do you prefer to use? Do you exhibit in art fairs like SOFA Chicago, for example? Do you represent other artists in your gallery? Sorry for asking 3 questions.
No, that's fine. So I don't do art fairs anymore. Oh, someone just started following me on Instagram. Nice. I'm on my phone here doing the Zoom. So I don't do art fairs. I only have my own work in this gallery because I just have so much work that I don't really have space or time to deal with anyone else's work. And what was the other question?
Do you represent other artists in your gallery?
No.
And what social media platforms do you prefer?
Oh, okay. So I use social media platforms where I think where the customers are. So for instance, I have no interest in TikTok. I have no interest in, although I am being told that maybe I should, but there's Snapchat and all these others. I just focus on where I think the buyers might be. So, Facebook kind of has an older clientele these days, and the young kids are going to other platforms. LinkedIn's huge because, that's a whole professional social media platform, and those people have offices, and then they need artwork.
And a follow-up question, how do you balance the challenge of possible pressures from client commissioning and your artistic choices freedom?
That's a good question. So I have turned down several commissions over the years just because it's an image that I really didn't think was something I wanted to paint. And that's a nice feeling when you get to that point where you can say, you know what, the money would be great right now, and I could always use the money because I'm an artist and I have a lot of expenses to cover. But artistically speaking, I can't do something like that. It would kill me to produce that painting. It's just not the subject matter is just not my thing. So you just have to make those decisions. What's more important? Is it the money and you're just going to swallow your pride and produce something you don't want to produce? Or what I also try to do is guide the customer to a better image. So if they come to me with an image that they think is going to be a great painting, and I tell them, trust me, this is what I do. I'm a professional. This will not be a great painting just because you might like it as a photograph and it's nice, but I just don't think it'll translate well for a painting. And maybe we could find a different image that you would like. So I just try to be professional about it and helpful and get to a better image.
Marinelle asks, how do you think art departments can do more to prepare students for the business of art? And should they?
That's one of the things I struggle with, because I don't want to discourage anyone from being an artist because it's a very important discipline and career, but a lot of people want to be artists. So I think what they really should do is make sure they help students know if their art translates well post-college as far as selling and making money on it. Because when you're in school, there's no focus on selling the work that you're producing in class. So if you want to make a living, you're going to have to sell it. So I think they may want to introduce some classes where the work that's being produced, they go out into the world and try and sell it and see if the students, how successful that is. If the student's really selling a lot of work, then that might translate well to them in their career after college. But you're going to find out quickly if it sells or not.
So you mentioned earlier in your talk that 60 to 70% of your business is something that you attribute to your activity on social media. I wonder, with that being the case, do you still feel that it's very important for you to have this physical gallery location?
That's a good question too, especially these days when there's so many vacant storefronts and vacant office spaces. Everyone's doing things virtually on Zoom and social media, and they're realizing those expenses aren't that necessary. I definitely need a space to create the work anyway, because I couldn't do it out of the home. My wife would kill me, and there's just not enough space. And I want my own space. So, but yeah, still think even with artwork, people need to see it in person. They want to be able to, it looks much different in person than it does on a screen. Like the paintings look great on the website, but once someone sees it in person, it's a much different feeling. They get to see it framed. They get to see it on a brick wall. I can give you guys a little tour in a little bit too here, but they can see it on a brick wall. They can see it on a dark wall. They can see the texture on the canvas, and they really get a sense of the size of the artwork. And then here's some prints of some things. So I think it's really still important to have an actual space. Because you see how much work I have. I got to put it somewhere. Yeah.
So we have a question from Anna, and she asks, what is the normal ratio of your commission versus original pieces? And also, how do you choose non-commissioned subjects to paint?
So I'm always producing. I have so many commission paintings right now. I have like 25 going right now. And actually many of them are images that are my images that I wanted to paint anyway, that customers chose from my my inventory. So I email them out a link of all my photographs I've taken over the past 20 years. And it's all broken down specifically based on where it is. So Chicago downtown, Chicago neighborhoods, New York's, New Orleans, Europe. So sometimes they'll just pick one of my own images that I wanted to paint anyway, which is terrific because I can just do what I wanted to do anyway and get paid for it. But then how do I balance it? I try to finish about 1 or 2 paintings for myself that I think I want to do and put on the wall for sale here at the gallery every couple months. And then I do about 3 or 4 commission paintings a month. And it's a big rotation. I'm just working on many paintings at the same time. It's tough. Sometimes, you do get a little burned out doing other people's, what other people want and not necessarily what you want to do, but I can't complain. I mean, I'm doing what I want to do for a living, and that's the most important thing. So, yeah.
Ellen has a question. She asks, how soon into the pandemic did you open the gallery again, or are you still by appointment?
So I was designated a non-essential business by the city because people didn't really need to come into a gallery when it first happened in March. But I was still coming in because I had work to do anyway. So I was painting every day at the gallery. But I did not have customers coming in because I wasn't allowed to for, I think, 3 or 4 months. And then they opened up the restrictions and I could have 1 or 2 come in at a time with masks on. And so that's kind of what it is now. But it was interesting because I used to keep daily hours at the gallery for my first 9 years of the gallery. So on my door and on my website, it was, 9 to 5 or 10 to 7. But the pandemic really helped me kind of reinvent my business a little bit because I realized I don't really need to be here for that amount of time or just be tied to those hours, because I felt like if I wasn't there, someone was going to show up when I said I was going to be there. And then and I'm the only one that works here too. So I have to run a lot of errands to the post office, the UPS store. So I just changed it to everything's by appointment or when I'm here at the gallery. And then I am here every day anyway. So if I'm here, people can come in.
Okay, more questions coming in. Gordon, I'll come back to your question. I want to skip to SJ's question. SJ says, I'm curious how you answer queries regarding your pricing. I know other creatives, especially photographers, who far too often are questioned like they are expensive, yet these folks seem to be reacting like consumers looking for a lowest price and not taking into account that the retail price has to cover both business and personal expenses. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, pricing is an interesting thing. And then some people say, paintings are more expensive than photography because with photography, it's easier to print it than actually create a whole painting, with a brush and paint and everything. But I've always been told by the gallery owners that I've dealt with in the past, it's based on what the market really translates and what the market will bear. So if someone's willing to spend $5,000 on one of your paintings, then you can keep charging that until you can't get it anymore. And if someone comes in and they want to negotiate with you a little bit, you can have that flexibility, but you can say, listen, I can't go below this price because I have other people out there who've spent that for something this size, and they'd be terribly upset about it if they ever found out you want, something else sold that for that price. So pricing's interesting. I've had kind of a steady price structure for the past 10 years. And I've been told by many collectors that I should increase my prices, that I'm not charging enough. And then I get people off the street that kind of get really scared by the prices. So it just depends, because everyone's got a different amount. Everyone's in a different economic situation, so it's tough. But the nice thing about owning my own gallery is that I can be flexible about it with customers and negotiate, and I don't have to worry about, paying a commission to the gallery owner. So
Gordon asks, how long does it take to complete a painting? And can you show us your studio space and how you go about starting a painting?
Sure. So I probably produce about 40 to 50 paintings a year. So that averages out to maybe 4 a month or so. And I've been doing that for 20 years. So it's starting to really take its toll on me physically, and I can't do that. I can't paint as fast as I used to. My hands hurt too much. So I'm still about maybe 3 or 4 paintings a month. It depends on how much detail's involved in the painting. But like I said, I have 25 paintings going at the same time. So I'm just rotating what I'm working on. It's kind of like an assembly line of paintings. And sometimes it's whatever I'm in the mood for that day, or sometimes it's whatever colors are on my palette. And I say, oh, I can use this. I should use this on this painting because it needs it, and that painting because it needs it. But yeah, I can give you another tour here. So here's the front window onto Clark Street. There's my desk. Got a big fish tank, and the lights are off right now in my fish tank, but here's some space. The other thing is you have to be diverse. You can't just sit around and wait for people to spend thousands of dollars on an original painting. You have to have other things for people that can't afford that. So I have small prints in the baskets for $20 of the paintings. I have small framed prints for $50. I've got big frame prints for $200. So these are all things that I can do at my gallery that I couldn't do when I was represented by a gallery, because they don't want you selling prints for $20. But you need to have an income coming in while you're waiting for the big things to sell. It's just like anything, you have to be diverse. And then this is my drawing board where I produce everything. So you see the photograph I've got up here of a beach scene in Fort Lauderdale that my wife took, actually, and the customer chose that as a painting. So I'm working on a big painting of it right now. And then these are all commissioned paintings. I think you can see a house portrait, a couple other portraits here. Another house portrait I'm doing. I do a lot of house portraits. Here's one of a scene. I don't know if you can see it here. So, oh yeah, here's one of Chicago I'm working on. That's something I just wanted to do. So, yeah, here it is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question from Christina. She asks, and you touched on, started to get into this a little bit with your last response, but can you address your painting process? Which medium do you use mostly? Oil, acrylics? Do you make your own frames or buy custom? What was your largest painting format? What's your preferred format, and how do you ship?
All good questions. I might need you to remind me all the questions again. Yeah. So I like to use acrylic on canvas, and then I use acrylic on watercolor paper because that's what my father did, and that's what I grew up learning how to do. I can use oil. I did that in college. Oil takes way too long to dry, and I produce so much work so quickly that I need it to dry quicker. I'm also left-handed, so if the paint is still wet, I'm going to smear it with my left hand. So I need it to dry quicker. And you can use acrylic kind of like an oil, real thick, and then you can water it down and use it on watercolor paper, kind of like a watercolor, but it's a little richer. So that's kind of what sometimes you learn when you hit your sweet spot, like you stick with it. You don't try to play around with other stuff. You just kind of, this is what you do, and this is what works for you. What was the other question? What's the largest piece I've done?
Yeah, that was one of the questions. And then a question about your framing. Is that something that you do yourself?
So the largest piece, I've done some 6 feet by 8 feet canvases for hospitals, a few hospitals in downtown Chicago, and then a couple in Houston and other hospitals around the country. Those are very expensive to ship, obviously, because they're so big. And then I don't build my own frames. I have a couple wholesalers that provide me with the frames. So I just give them the dimensions that I need, and then they ship them to me or they deliver them to me. And I just pop my artwork. Well, if it's canvas, I just put the painting in it and I secure it myself and everything. And if it's a watercolor, they send me the matte paper or the matte board and the backing and the glass, and I put them all together myself, but I don't build the frames.
And how do you typically do shipping?
I usually tell the customer this is going to cost a lot, and and I'm not covering it. But it's hard because you never know how much each piece is going to cost. It's based on size and where it's going. So when people ask you for an estimate, sometimes I've definitely underestimated what it's going to cost based on what I thought it was going to cost. And it's hard to go back to the customer and say, sorry, I told you 150, but it's really 300. So sometimes I just kind of eat the extra cost, and because I want to be a good businessman.
Chance asks, what is your favorite size of canvas to paint on?
I like doing big pieces. Yeah. The smallest I'll do is 18 by 24. People ask me to do really small paintings because they think it'll be cheaper, but it's actually a lot harder to do such small work with the kind of detail I like to get in my work. So it just kills me to work with the smallest little brush, and I hate small paintings. So yeah, I'd like to do 30 by 40 or larger, but not everyone has the wall space for that kind of thing, and not everybody wants to spend that kind of money. So
We have a question about insurance. What kind of insurance considerations do you have for your gallery and your pieces?
So I have monthly insurance on the gallery that I'm required to have for the retail brokerage firm that I rent the space from. So that covers, fire, or any other kind of damage. But other than that kind of insurance, I'm not sure what they mean.
I think you've answered.
Yeah. Okay.
Marinelle asks, do your customers mind buying something that is multiple rather than an original? And do you ever attest that a painting will remain an original?
Right. So I'll never produce the same painting twice. That's a moral and ethical thing that I have for customers. If I do the same image, I'll do kind of a different variation on it, and it'll be a different size. It'll never be the same size, same image. And then the customers, when they're buying an original painting, there's an understanding that they own that painting, and then they can go take that painting and sell it for 4 times as much as they bought it from me and keep all the profits from it, and I see nothing of that. But I inherently own the rights to the image. There's laws out there for artists. It's called inherent copyright. So, unless they want to buy that from me so that I don't make prints of the work, then I can make prints of the work. And I don't think any customer really wants to begrudge an artist who's doing this for a living to try to make money on their own images. All the prints are numbered and signed with a pen, so it's not like it doesn't look like an original. So
you mentioned earlier how you had earlier in your career, you had that breakthrough moment where you got into that first gallery.
Yeah.
Was that something that gave you momentum just in terms of how you thought about yourself and your work, or did it have very real implications in terms of doors that were opened to you elsewhere because of that first gallery?
Both things. And I'll tell you the story of how that happened too, because it's pretty funny. I was kind of tired and beaten down from the process of approaching galleries with my portfolio, my work. And back then you'd have to bring a sheet of slides, which were very expensive to have produced slides of your work, and no one uses slides anymore. And I just wanted to bring a CD with the JPEGs on it, but they were still sticklers for the way they used to do it. But, and a lot of times it just wasn't something I wanted to do. I wanted to create the artwork. I didn't want to go market myself to galleries. So at the time, and now she's my wife, but at the time it was my girlfriend, or we might've been engaged, and she asked me what I wanted for my birthday. And I said, I'd like you to approach these galleries downtown with my portfolio and see if one of them will pick me up. And she said, I'll do it. And I said, it won't cost you anything. So she brought like examples of my work, and she went to specific galleries that I told her that would represent the kind of work that I do. And one of them picked me up, and it was great. And he started selling a lot of my work, and it gave me a lot of confidence. And then you start, it's like it's just a building block. You put it on your resume that you're represented by that gallery. And then I did spend some money advertising in American Art, some national magazine. I forget what it's called, but they approached me to do some advertising. So I did that. And then a gallery in Santa Fe, New Mexico reached out to me because they saw the paintings and then they wanted to represent me, and it kind of snowballed from there.
You talked about how when you're putting your work on social media, you're very mindful of not being pushy, not being salesy. You're just putting things out there, and if people like it, they'll connect with you. What about when people come into your gallery? What's going through your mind as you're interacting with people? Are you trying to direct someone to a sale, or are you just having a conversation? What's that?
Not really. I just have conversations with people. I talk to them about where they're from, and if they are visitors and they're from out of town, I tell them I'm an encyclopedia about this city by now. So I tell them a great restaurant to go to or a great place to go, before COVID. But I just kind of build these relationships with people where they're just having a nice conversation with me and I'm not pushing them about buying anything. And if they're from my hometown, then we start talking about Michigan and Detroit and all those other things. And then I tell them, oh, I have some nice pictures of New York City, or, you should see them. So when a customer's in here, obviously I'd like to sell something to them, but I don't like, as a consumer, I don't like being approached by pushy salespeople. I get real turned off by that. So the last thing I want to do is do that to somebody, but I just try to be friendly, helpful. I kind of say the same thing over and over again. It's like a broken record, Original paintings are on the walls, matted prints are in the baskets, big frame prints are on the floor. So that's kind of how it goes.
Gordon asks, Josh, was there an advantage to your career from your experience to go to a liberal arts school versus a dedicated arts school?
Yes, very much. So by the time I was going into college, I felt confident enough with my ability as an artist that I knew I was capable of producing art the way I thought was good enough. But I wanted to have other aspects of my life advanced. So that's what a liberal arts college can do for you with these different classes in economics and history. And when you go to a small private school like Ohio Wesleyan or Lake Forest College, you build these relationships and networks with people. And that's you're not a small fish in a big pond. You can make your way and people can remember you. Like I thought about going to Michigan, but it's just such a big school. It's 40,000 people, and they would definitely, the professors wouldn't even know who I was, and then at a school like Lake Forest or Ohio Wesleyan, they're going to remember you. I still talk to my old history professor, my old African politics professor, and they're proud of me. And it's a nice feeling. It's like a family. And I'm still involved with the college because I want to be, but also because it might benefit my career. And I think that all these students should, once they leave the school, they should always try to have a relationship with the school somehow.
So you've been painting for a long time. You've got a large body of work. When you're painting and deciding what you're going to paint, are you making those decisions with a specific type of customer in mind? I mean, have you segmented your business in such a way that you're making your creative decisions around that, or not really?
Yeah, sometimes ideas will come to me in the middle of the night. I'll just be laying there watching TV with my wife, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I bet this idea would be popular. And so actually during COVID, I've become so friends with so many restaurant and bar owners in Chicago. And during COVID, they were all shut down and a lot of them closed for good. And they were really, really struggling. So I decided, I think it would be a great idea for my artwork to try to help these people and also bring some attention to the work that I'm doing too, because these places are so popular that once I produce a painting of it, it's going to sell right away because people are missing going to that place. They feel bad that they're struggling so much. And so I built some nice partnerships with the owners of these places. And as I sold these paintings, I'd give them either 50% of the sale, or sometimes I'd even give them the painting and let them try to raise money on it for their employees. And those types of just kind of creative ideas they're new. There's something different than I was doing before, and they spark people's interest. and they can turn into really good things for you, even if you're not making the money right there, then and there. Even if you're not making money from selling the painting because you're giving it to them, you feel good about doing that for a company, but you also are going to reap the benefits of that somewhere down the line, because someone's going to see that and say, oh, well, will you do this restaurant for me, or could you do this bar for me? So yeah, I just come up with different ideas sometimes. And I approached some realtors about 15 years ago, and I said, instead of bringing a bottle of wine or a gift certificate to a customer that bought or sold a home from you, how about you bring them a nice big print of a Chicago painting that I've got, for their blank wall at their new home that you just sold them or they're moving from? Or how about, if it's a big sale, if it's a house you made a lot of money on, how about I do a custom commissioned portrait of that house for them? So there's just different kind of things that come to me, and that ends up being a real big money maker for me.
SA asks, it's been said that people don't want to be sold to, but instead they want to buy. Do you believe this maxim holds true in the world of art?
Yes, very much. Yeah. Nobody really wants to be sold to. Yeah. People want to buy if they see something they like and they want. And that's what I always tell people that come into the gallery. They'll say, well, I'm looking for something that's got like some blues in it because I've got a carpet that's got this blues in it, but then we have these throw pillows that have some orange in it. Do you have anything like that? And I said, no, that's not why you're buying the artwork. You're buying it because you like it, you want it, and you want to live with it the rest of your life, and you want to pass it down to your family. It's just, you want to have it forever. You don't want to just match your interior, that eventually you're going to get rid of that couch, but you'll still have the painting.
Our next question, are your paintings affected by what's going on in the world currently?
That's a good question. Yeah, so I got to be careful here. So 2016, I decided to do some socially conscious paintings because I was so kind of affected by what was going on in the world. There were so many topics I wanted to cover, and I thought I could make an impact with my paintings. So one of them was the idea that we'd been at war for, at the time, 16 years, and people kind of forgot about it, right? No, I mean, people didn't realize we're still in Afghanistan, still in Iraq, and soldiers are away from their children. And so I did a painting. I think this was the first one I did. I did a painting of, let's see if you can see it, a soldier coming home from war, hugging her daughter in the airport, from an image that a friend of mine, she was a Marine in Iraq. She sent me the photograph. So I did this painting. I still have it. It didn't sell, but I wanted to do it. And then I did a painting. There's also, as many of you know, a big crime problem in Chicago. So I did a painting of a night scene of a couple police officers standing over a kind of taped off section, and it's probably a murder or something like that. And it was really, it's a very sad subject, but it was a beautiful painting just because it just kind of glowed with the street lights, and I called it Nightly Occurrence because it is a nightly occurrence that we see on the news, but we kind of ignore. It's going to happen so I wanted to do these paintings, and I had something about the gas line in the Native American lands. I was going to do a painting of that. Global warming, I was going to do a painting of some factories with a lot of toxins going off into the air. But they're beautiful images, but they're terrible, sad subjects. But I enjoy those types of things because once you put it on canvas and make it a certain size, it's more impactful. But I realized I still need to make money. So those weren't selling as much as some other things. So I'll still do them here and there, but it's not going to be a big part of my career.
We have a question from Mary Nell. Opening a gallery requires a large investment in real estate or even having storage for your body of work. How can a young artist work up to being able to make those kinds of investments?
So I was having this conversation with a customer this morning when I dropped off a commissioned painting for him. I did a view from his condo, and I was talking about speaking tonight. And I told him one of the subjects I wanted to bring up is, how does an artist pay for this kind of undertaking? It's not easy. You can't just walk into a bank and say, I'd like a small business loan, I have great credit. Here's my history of annual sales. You can trust me, because they're going to look at you and say, well, yeah, but you're an artist. It's got this stigma attached to it that it's too risky for a bank to give you money, especially, during certain economic times too. I think this was like 2007 or 8. And then, so I had to take a different route, because even though I had great credit and, I had a strong history of sales and everything, they just don't trust artists to be businesses. So every painting I sold, I tried not to spend everything I made and save some money and have some money available to pay for things like frames and pay for things like the rent on the gallery and the utilities and the insurance, and it adds up quickly. But and sometimes you got to, like I said in one of my points here, you have to take risks and you have to take chances. So sometimes you got to throw those big bills on a credit card and deal with it later, but you need to keep the ball rolling. You need to keep the wheel going. You can't get scared by taking risks, because there's that old saying, you got to spend money to make money. But there's going to be down times, and there's going to be times when you need income. But yeah, so you just got to make it work. I don't really have any other suggestion other than you're just going to have to try it and see how it goes. I didn't get a big loan from family or anything. My mom loaned me $1,000 towards the security deposit. I think she's on this Zoom here with us, but she had enough faith in me, and I paid it back. But I just did it based on what I sold, and that's what I'm doing.
Well, Josh, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for making the time for us tonight and for fielding all these questions. Audience, thanks for all the great questions. It's been a really good conversation. Alexis is trying to sneak one last question.
Okay, sure.
We'll do it. Do you prefer that people reach out to you through email or social media?
You can do either. You can do both. I'm pretty quick. And then one last thing I'll say before we go that I kind of forgot to talk about was, my wife always gives me a hard time because she says, you're always working, Josh. You're always working. Like, I'm answering emails or texts or Facebook messages, maybe 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night from customers. And I do feel bad about it, but at the same time, customers really do appreciate a quick response. If they feel like they're getting ignored, or you're just not that interested, you might lose that sale. And that sale could be very important, And so I am always quick to respond to people. So if you do reach out to me, I'll probably respond within a day or so, or even hours.
Right. Fantastic. Well, Josh, thanks again. This was a really great talk. It was great having all the interaction with the audience. Learned a lot of things through this question and answer.
Great. And I would also say, just take a look at the website, because that's got everything I've ever produced on it under the portfolio section. And then it has a whole page of my father's illustrations from the 40s, 50s, and 60s too.
I looked through those earlier today. It was really fun.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And we have our last speaker in the series next week with Jay Martin, who's talking about taking principles from coaching and applying that to the world of business and management. I hope you can join us for that one too. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.